Welcome back to another episode of The Maine State of Mind. We got Josh Moulton from Queen City Cinema Club joining myself, Justin.
And Adam.
And we're talking movies again. But this one, we're going to talk a little bit more generic about some comic book movies in general. I was originally going to say, Josh, we should do top 10 movies. But then I realized that it's kind of boring because my top 10 movies would all be in the MCU. And that would not be as fun. So then I'm like, I can't really do a comic book top 10 countdown because that's not fun.
I actually thought about that with you and like wrote a tentative non-Marvel list so that I could keep jumping in and being like, how about this movie?
Could have done top 10 non-Marvel movies.
Yes, I thought about that. But then like, that's not fair for me. I'm picking movies that I don't give a crap about. Right. And I went through my Plex server last night and was making some collections. And I realized how many more Marvel movies I own a lot of those movies, but like how many more Marvel movies there are than there are DC movies. Like, you know, if you think about, if you just take Batman as a whole, and all the different Batman iterations there is, but there's not a lot of other, like, I mean, there's like, again, Superman as a whole has been a bunch of Superman movies, but there hasn't been like a lot of different characters like Marvel's been able to do recently with the MCU and with X-Men and all that stuff. So
if I get told the same Batman story again, I'm going to lose my mind.
What one?
The same.
Well, it's like the whole Spider-Man thing, and why I'm glad, we'll get into it, but why I'm glad Marvel didn't do an origin story per se for Spider-Man when they did the MCU version of Spider-Man, because again, and it's what we hope, and I will see again, we'll get into it, is what Fantastic Four will be. When they bring Fantastic Four in here, I do not want to see again how the hell they became the Fantastic Four. Just do a little montage at the beginning saying Fantastic Four, and it's them getting their powers.
Don't need to see them transform for the first time.
Bam, done. But
what would be interesting though is whether they do it for X-Men.
Yeah, and see, that's the other one. It's like,
because they've never really done but there's whispers about how are mutants going to be introduced. So they're almost like forced to come up with, this is how mutants exist, Yeah,
it's true.
I mean, could they do more of a soft origin story or a flashback origin story? I kind of wouldn't mind. But like starting a movie, like I don't want to watch another X-Men movie on how the X-Men became the X-Men. Sure. I think it'd be fun to just, again, if they do this multiverse thing they're going through right now, it may just be that they've already existed and now they're just joining the multiverse.
I guess that was my point. It wasn't to pile on Batman. It was just to say I don't need to see everybody's origin story every time.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Sure.
What I wanted to go over quickly before we get into like what's been right, what's been wrong with Marvel or comic book movies, I should say, is I wanted to go over a couple of things. So the first ever Marvel movie was Captain America. It was the 1944 Captain America, which was awful. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. You must have. Do you have it at the Queen City?
No.
I have it. I think I should get it to you.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next first Marvel movie was actually Howard the Duck. And that was in 1986, right?
Yep.
And then the actual first, like one I say where Marvel started was with Blade. Blade in 1998 was actually the beginning of Marvel movies in the theater, in my opinion. Like the actual thing. And then if you go first MCU was Iron Man 2008.
Yes.
Obviously X-Men was in between that and stuff like that. But that's how like the progression of Marvel's gone over the years. Yep. Blade, if you think about it, some people will say X-Men is the beginning of the Marvel movies, but Blade actually was what made people think they could make a movie off of a comic book for Marvel. For DC, the first DC movie was Superman and the Mole Man in 1951. But next was Batman in 1966, but it was related to the TV show with Adam West. The actual first was probably Superman in 1978. Like I said, that's where I think probably DC movies started. And then the first DCEU, and I'm going to use it in quotations here for anybody watching, because the DCEU is basically non-existent if you think about it. Like, it's not the continuity and the strong foundation that MCU thing, but they call it the DCEU.
I don't know about you, Josh.
Man of Steel.
I feel like Justin throws shade on DC.
Yeah, a little too much. Like I get it. You know what I mean? And like, I have a lot of issues with all the movies.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But
no, but I completely understand it. But what I'm saying is that when you call it something like the DCEU and you're switching characters up and rebooting things already, you can't call yourself a universe, extended universe.
Right, I would agree.
Things.
You can't call yourself a universe, but you could kind of retroactively be like, we were already a multiverse.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, yes. Exactly.
Right.
You know, and it's like I said, there's a lot of good ones. I have no problem with some of the DC movies in general. I like watching them. Sure. I know it's not. I just think that when it's the same thing we have a problem with comparing someone to the previous. It's like when I am such in love with MCU, when I compare it to the MCU, it falls drastically below it. But if I don't compare it to the MCU, if you just look at the movies on an individual basis and not say, hey, which one's better, there are some movies that stand out. I mean, obviously, to me personally, again, in that thing, Man of Steel 2013 was the beginning of the DCEU. But really, the best movies that have come out from DC, in my opinion, are Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. And those movies technically aren't even part of the DCU. Right. They're before the DCU.
Yeah, right, for sure.
And so what I wanted to really talk about as we do this, we don't want to do a super long podcast, but something was what works and what doesn't in general for a comic book movie. But what works, why is Marvel so successful in this? Because let's be honest, I do have a love for Marvel, but we'll be honest here and say that Marvel has done way better than any other comic book company in making movies right now. And what hasn't worked for DC, for an example, or what has worked for DC for them, and then other comic book films and so on. There's no specific order. We can jump in here and there and do whatever we want.
Sure.
But I know for me personally, what's worked for Marvel is casting. Like they've done a great job casting the characters, I believe. The idea that they've been all connected and you want to watch the next one to see how it's connected. And then I think their directing has been pretty outstanding. Absolutely. And they haven't had to recast and reshape and all that stuff. And I think for me, and just quickly, that's what has not worked for DC, in my opinion. Like, so if you think about what's worked for Marvel has not worked for DC, I think DC has a great number of solo good movies. Again, your Dark Knight Rises. I think I'm looking forward to. So this episode actually will come out after Suicide Squad hits the theaters, but we're recording it the week Suicide Squad comes out. The new Suicide Squad. I'm actually it's probably one of the most sought after movie I've seen from DC ever. Honestly, is this new Suicide Squad movie. But if anybody else wants to jump in, what they think.
I mean, I think you and I've touched on this before, and with the Marvel universe, I always thought something that was brilliant is they stuck with the comics. They didn't try to reinvent everything for the modern audience, and they just trusted that comic book fans were gonna like movies that were based on the comics. And because there was that thing for a while, like even if it was other like everything, outfits were all modernized. Like I read the other day, there actually, I guess, was a debate early on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe about whether Captain America should have a gun because it would make more sense to modern audiences. And I think it was Kevin that was like, that's no. Like, have you ever read Captain America? Right. And they were like, oh, okay. And like I said, had they done that, it could have been just a flop. But so I think respecting the fact that there's comic book fans and that the comics are what you should be building on is so apparent, even in how we've said that it's like you get a little Iron Man, you get a little Thor. Oh, what is this? A crossover event? Yeah. So like it just felt like comic books to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you guys both touched on like what my answer would be, which is just like it's the architecture. It's Kevin Feige, and it's like him being able to like have control over that and kind of put, obviously you've got different directors doing vastly different characters in vastly different genres, but to be able to basically have a roadmap and follow it and then make adjustments as possible. And just like, I mean, like you said, the casting is amazing. Like Adam said, the comic book feel of the entire experience, it's all integrated.
Yes.
It's all, I mean, it's Disney, it's Marvel. These are huge entertainment companies. They know what they're doing. I think that's something that I've actually started to experience with the Marvel movies because there are so many of them.
Yeah, right.
I love them. And every time I walk in, I go, is this the one? Is this the one where like I become disillusioned and I realize that like this is just all like a big commercial being beamed into my brain? Like has it gone too far? Is it jump the shark? Whatever the case may be, like almost every time I go into a Marvel movie now, I'm like, is this the one where the illusion fades because this was all kind of just like a very intricately and very well designed shell game to you know what I mean? Because I'm like
to sell you products.
But every single time I come out of the movie, I'm like, that's a damn good movie.
Yes.
Like so that's the key is at the end of the day, they hit like, the comedy, they hit the casting, they hit like, the emotional appeal, and like you nitpick at things like sky beams and CGI armies and stuff like that, but like when it comes down to it, like every movie they make is good.
Well, and they reinvent,
and entertaining,
like,
you know.
Yes.
You know, Justin and I've said, like, after all of the first waves of Marvel movies, like, my wife was still like, okay, well, they're not that great. And I was like, well, watch WandaVision with me. And, you know, she was like, oh my God, that was amazing. And she watched Loki. And I'm like, I mean, how late into the game are we? And they're still able to, like, bring my wife who doesn't care about comics at all into it. Like, that's crazy. Like
the Friends from Work podcast I listen to that reviews the MCU stuff, and they do the TV shows as well and all that stuff. One of my favorite things they say is like they're just waiting for that one time where Marvel misses, and it just seems like they don't. Like, if anything, I mean, Josh just went to a baseball game, so I can do a baseball reference here. Is that a lot of times they are like they've hit home runs. You know, with some of my movies that I love, I think they've hit a home run with Thor Ragnarok. Oh gosh, they hit a home run with I mean, they maybe hit a grand slam to me with friggin' Thor Ragnarok, but they had a home run with Infinity War and Endgame and all that stuff. And they've hit some, you know, some base hits and stuff like that they actually haven't done. But every single one of them makes contact. You know what I mean? There's not a single one where it's a swing and a miss completely.
They all move the game forward.
Yes, like, and there's never been a. So what I feel bad for the DC fan, someone who's a Marvel fan like myself, but on the opposite with the DC side of it is, they don't know when they go into it whether or not they're actually going to turn out to be. Like, they could have made a badass freaking trailer, and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And then they get there, they're like, I'm still not wondering whether or not this is going to be another Dark Knight,
right? Or
this is going to be another Aquaman. You know, it's like one of those like weird, like, is it going to be good or not? And also, they're not creating as much as Marvel's creating right now, so it's like if they do swing and miss, it's a longer period. There's no one there to pick up. Like, if Black Widow had swung and miss, Shang-Chi is coming out in September. Is hopefully we'll be able to bring up that miss and hit a home run. And so like they have that coming, and DC just doesn't have that right now. And I think that I feel bad for those DC fans. Yeah, but I'm a comic book movie fan in general, so like I watched Birds of Prey with Taylor the other night. I'm sorry. I just didn't like it. I love her. I think Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is phenomenal. That is one of the few castings that I will say is spot on. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't know about what it was about what the movie. Maybe I just need to watch it again. I don't know if it's one of those movies that just needs me to watch it more than once for you to actually get what's going on. I just wasn't a big fan of it, like I probably will be with Suicide Squad.
And I should real quick say for the record, because we talk about Marvel all the time, I actually am a huge DC fan.
Yeah.
I love Marvel too, but I like most of my childhood was DC. So just throw that out there for discussion.
I grew up. Yeah, I was kind of. I mean, like my first comic books were. I had Spider-Man. You know, I had X-Men. But I also had Batman more than anything. You know what I mean? Like, I was all about Batman. So, yeah. That's just like where I'm coming from. Birds of Prey, I liked it. I thought it was better than I thought it was going to be because I thought it was going to be awful.
Okay.
And I can say I liked it.
Okay.
Like, there was room for improvement.
Well, you know? But I also will say that I will be honest and tell you that not every Marvel movie is good.
Yeah.
Sorry, not every Marvel movie is great. I feel like they've been good. They've been one of those things, again, if you don't compare it to something else. Like if you think back on like, you know, your Dark Worlds or your Incredible Hulks, if you don't compare that to anything else and you just watch the movie for what it is as a movie, it was well made. There's some CGI issues in some of these. You know, obviously they're older and stuff like that. Some of the budgets weren't there. There might be some continuity things to the comic books that don't relate very well because they didn't have the rights to do something or something along those lines. But if you watch the movie as a standalone movie, yes. And maybe that's probably why I didn't like Birds of Prey as much. It's like, I would have loved to see a point of seeing Joker in that movie. If anyone, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Joker's not in that movie, but like you know, just the relationship they did break up. But even in flashback, even something saying that they broke up, and it's like a picture from the original Suicide Squad movie of, you know, him breaking up with her or whatever it may be. But just something to relate but if you watched Birds of Prey as a movie as its own, yes, it was probably it was good. The special effects were cool. I like the acting was cool. I am a big person of the continuity in the overall massive universe.
Right, sure.
And DC doesn't have that, so that's probably why a lot of their movies fall flat to me. Is that they have some of it, but it doesn't connect as much.
Doesn't
have
that feeling of like momentum to it.
Correct. Yeah. And that's part of probably the only downside I've heard that I will say about Black Widow is that it was put in such an obscure, weird spot in the timeline.
It didn't make sense.
That it didn't move the story forward as much as I wanted it to. Like everything else is done, and so it's the same with Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel moved the story a little bit ahead, but it's like it's not.
Yeah,
it's a weird spot.
I think Captain Marvel was like big time setup for things that have been planned, and we still haven't really even seen the beginning of.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, Black Widow, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I'll just quickly, I'll say she deserved a movie way before now.
Oh, way before, yeah,
Absolutely.
way before now, yeah.
Like every time I get in this conversation, I'm like, she's the centrifuge of the Avengers. Like she's the straw that stirs the drink. Like
she's been in more Marvel movies than any other character.
Yeah, and like she went and got Hulk the first time. You know what I mean? She was the one surveilling Iron Man when Fury's looking at him for Avengers. You know, she had Cap's back in all those movies. She's the one that, you know, brought in Hawkeye, you know, and just like when everything fell apart in Infinity War, who was running the show at the beginning of the next movie? You know what I mean? And you kind of see it, you know, just somebody else say some.
He's very emotional about this movie.
He's getting caught up by it. But like, that's the best thing about having just more than one person on a podcast is that something happens like that. And that's the point. I think a lot of people talk about it. It's almost like they didn't know what a female-led superhero movie was going to do.
And a female that doesn't have insane flying powers.
Correct.
Like,
and so it's like I understood why it waited a little bit, but I felt like I feel like Marvel should have done it, and the chances that it would miss would probably have been better earlier on than it would have been if they did it now. And the pandemic didn't help because it extended even further past the end of the Infinity Saga.
Yeah, and nobody's going to the movie theater. Yeah.
No. Well, I know, she's suing people because of that.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So the other thing I would say is, although it didn't connect or move it forward necessarily, although you do get, you know, some new characters.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a Red Guardian movie.
Oh,
yeah. That'd be
no, actually, what I would love to see a Red Guardian like a Hulu show, like with the deep darkness that MODOK is right now, like the swearing and like just him, this grungy Red Guardian show would be freaking awesome, based in Russia.
But I thought they did a really good job of connecting it back to the things that we've had breadcrumbs for 10 years ago, you know, and that just goes back to what we were saying about like the architecture of it. And, you know, whether like, I think that's just like an added element that, you know, for Justin, you know, makes it more enjoyable because there is more to it. It's more attached. You know what I mean? But like some of the callbacks and stuff that they did in that movie, I was like, that's genius.
Yes.
You know, like you answered all of our questions, you know? So I love the movie. Tiffany walked out of it and she was like, that was my favorite Marvel movie.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people say that too.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to agreeing with her, you know?
But, like, you know, and again, one of the things I will say to a lot of people who think it's too many comic book movies or too many Marvel movies, too many DC movies, so on and so forth. Let's get past the superhero part of it, is that, in a sense, Black Widow's not a superhero. She is, but she's not a superhero with powers. And so she's a different person. And so all I will say is that Marvel's been able to do, and again, I'm going to tote Marvel a lot, is different superhero movies. So that movie was a superhero movie, but honestly, I would honestly put like action adventure, like Mission Impossible style movie pre-superhero. So it was like, yes, you saw someone with superpowers in the movie, like you saw Red Guardian like pick up something, and it kind of caught me by surprise, honestly. When I saw the movie and I saw them use powers in the movie, I was like, oh wait, this is not Mission Impossible. This is a superhero movie.
It is part of that very like subtle but very strong like espionage bit to Marvel that's been there forever.
And then you have like Ant-Man, which is a heist movie. And you have like Guardians of the Galaxy and some of Thor Ragnaroks, which are more comedy-based movies. And you have your drama-based movies and things. There's just like, I feel like they were able to take every genre and put it as a subgenre to a superhero movie where it's not just kick, punch, fly, kill. There's more depth to it.
You're getting a variety of characters. So Widow gets her own movie. I mean, who, you know, aside from like hardcore comic book readers, knew who Guardians of the Galaxy were before that came out.
It was a dollar book. It was a dollar comic book in the comic book bin before that movie was made.
Oh, I just found a bunch of them in that collection in my storage, and it's like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like,
on the flip side, you're getting the same Batman movie, the same Spider-Man movie, or not Spider-Man, Superman movie. You know what I mean? Like you're getting the same characters, you're getting reboots and reiterations of something that we just saw. And you're, you know, I am excited for the Matt Reeves Batman.
Correct. Well, and here's my thought: is what you know. Okay, there's two things on this. One is the benefit that Marvel gets is that Marvel Studios runs Marvel Studios. Like Marvel, you know, Disney owns Marvel, but like Marvel Studios makes their movies.
They're
So Kevin
autonomous.
Feige is in charge of their movies. He has someone in charge of all of that. Whereas Warner Brothers owns DC. So Warner Brothers has a different. It's not the same. It feels like DC doesn't have their own studios in a sense. It's DC Studios, but it's not its own division like Marvel is. Whereas there's not one person in charge. There is, but it's not the same kind of person. Whereas Warner Brothers is more like bottom dollar kind of thing. Not looking at the connection to the comic books, not looking at the connection to the previous movies. It's all about how much can this movie make us right now. And I think it's a different spot. And I think Warner Brothers is in a different financial spot than Disney is. And so it becomes more of a box office problem and less of a, let's just put our faith in this one person like Kevin Feige and see what he can do with it and see where it can go.
Right.
And they were able to make movies in Guardians of the Galaxy. They were able to make movies. I mean, let's be honest. When Iron Man came out in 2008 and you saw Black Widow in there, none of us were ever like, hey, they should make a Black Widow movie.
No.
At that point,
And if I'm brutally honest with you, when they first talked about Iron Man, I was no
one thought that.
No, but which we've talked about was the brilliance of it, though. Like, it was bold, it was a brilliant idea, could have really fallen flat. Because I at first was like, seriously, after all this time, you're giving me Iron Man, and then it was brilliant.
Yes, right? It was brilliant. And obviously, the problem, if you ever, there's a cool couple books out there that I've read, Marvel's Slugfest or Marvel versus DC Slugfest. There's a couple other books that I've read that one of the things they talked about is they really wish they would have had released Iron Man in 2008 and then waited like a year or two to release Incredible Hulk, because Incredible Hulk would have been a completely different movie if they had seen the success of Iron Man.
Sure.
Because Iron Man was actually like, if they would have made it Incredible Hulk more like Iron Man, it would have been different. Obviously, they were able to like blast past that, and now they are where they are now.
Right.
But like, it could have been the failure, not Iron Man, but the one that they actually thought was actually going to be the glue that stuck everything together in Incredible Hulk could have been the failure. It could have been that we're not talking about Marvel movies the way we are now because of that movie. And it's insane. I mean, I'm listening to a podcast right now called Off Panel. It's a comic book based podcast, and you're talking to Brian Michael Bendis, which you'll listen to another episode of the podcast. We're talking about top comic book writers. You can find out where that writer is in my favorite writers. Yeah. But he mentioned that when he got hired at Marvel, they were selling filing cabinets for cash. And he goes, I don't know why he signed an exclusive deal with Marvel at that time, because it seemed kind of sketchy that they were silent. Like in New York City, you like walk down New York City and buy a filing cabinet from Marvel.
Get in at the bottom.
But he's talking about how they were one point, like if you talk 30 years ago and said, hey, Marvel's going to be one of the most sought after comic book movies in the world, you'd be like, what are you talking about? They're not even going to be making comic books anymore, let alone movies. Right. Then to get to where they are now is insane, which is, I think, the Marvel and the DCs of the world. Again, DC has some good movies out there. And again, I'm really looking forward to looking at Suicide Squad and Matt Reeves' Batman. But maybe they should have rebooted at some point and said, okay, we're starting with Matt Reeves' Batman, and that's the beginning of the next universe. And from this point on is our DC EU or whatever.
I think what they kind of decided to do was kind of be like, we can't meet them on that battlefield. They're like, they're so far, Marvel's so far ahead of us. They're doing it so well. We can't be like, okay, now we're going to do it. Like, it's just like, they've already tried it and they couldn't get together. And now they're just like, all right, we're just going to give interesting projects to interesting people. James Gunn, Matt Reeves, I mean, James Wan, I thought James Wan did a great job with Aquaman. Like, that's one of I like that one better than most of the other movies.
Right.
Part of, maybe what I used to look back on, see the Joker, but that would be, if you're going to go that route, it went completely different. And so it's like, it was like all of a sudden you get this Suicide Squad had just come out recently, and then you had these like, you were like, got this ball rolling, and then all of a sudden I know where they come up with a Joker that's nothing like the Joker we've ever seen, and it kind of threw people off, and that's why I think it got such bad rap. I thought the movie itself was good. I just think that again, relating it to everything else, it fell wicked flat.
I really liked that movie.
And I guess they're gonna come out with they're coming out with another one, and he's gonna eventually transition himself into the more of the actual Joker you're expecting to see. But I think when I look back on it, it was that they went too far they led too far into the CW universe. Like when Marvel was like kicking ass in the theaters with Iron Man and all that stuff, they're like Arrowverse, and it's like, but it was so kiddie. It's like, I feel like DC's is either done super kiddie or teeny bopper, or super dark, and they don't have anything really in the middle that like.
Well, the funny thing about that is their cartoons are super dark.
Yes.
And actually, have you seen Harley Quinn on HBO?
Yes.
That
It is fantastic.
Well, that's a lot of people say. We talked about this off air at OBC one day, which was basically like the one thing that they have done good is the animated cartoons.
They kill it with the
all their cartoons are awesome.
It's insane.
The Harley Quinn series is hilarious. If you haven't seen it,
it's so good.
Yeah,
and it's funny. I was mentioning to Adam was the fact that the funny thing about it, if you look back and you look at the overall big pictures of things, is who do you think would have a better animation? The company that's owned by Disney? Right. Or the company that's owned by, I mean, Warner Brothers obviously has some history in animation too, but it's like the Disney, who was like, whenever I look at an animated film and it looks good, I'm always like, I bet Disney makes that movie. And they're the ones that are not doing well in animation. Obviously, the only great animated Marvel movie is Into the Spider-Verse, and it was made by Sony. It wasn't even made by Marvel.
Right.
And so it's like, in MODOK's great, but MODOK's, again, obscure, and it's a TV show that's on Hulu. But like, which makes me think about how awesome the freaking Deadpool show would have been looking at MODOK. I was so pissed.
Donald Glover.
Although the old Marvel X-Men animated series was rad.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of people get into comic books, is that TV show.
Yeah, I've been watching the Marvel Avengers Assemble, and then I was going to go into the next one after that. But just like, late at night when I'm tired from work and it's easy, But yeah, I think DC's approach, just to kind of circle back around, put a bow on that, like, is also kind of comic book approach, because you're going to have 5 or 6 runs of Batman going at one time.
Yeah,
sure.
And they're all going to be slightly different iterations of the character. And, depending on what era we're talking about, because obviously they have done multiversal events, and, then it all gets shrink back down to 1 and resets, New 52, all that stuff, But like, I think that would be kind of the key to their success moving forward, is to make that explicit. So you still get your universe, but it's a multiverse, but everybody's on the same page. And you're like, all right, this Batman over here is played by the kid from Twilight, and he's like, messed up in the head and living in this kind of probably weird, I think it's going to be like very dystopian, but it's going to have the detective elements,
Sure.
But then you still have Ben Affleck in a different story about the same character, but maybe in a slightly different iteration, doing Flashpoint.
Right.
And I can see that. I just feel like I guess it might be years for me to figure that, like, to get okay with that, because they did try to do it with Aquaman and with Justice League and with Wonder Woman and all that stuff. They tried that, and so if they're not going to go that route, it might just take a couple of years for it to go, okay, this is not what Marvel DC's trying to do. Again. Exactly, doing the reset, but a soft reset, which is basically just like, we're just going to make badass movies, focus on that one movie, don't care about the fact. And they might. The cool thing is they might mention someone else. They might mention Joker and Prey, even though they're not actually going to put Joker in there. It's just that cool thing, but I don't know. It's probably just, again, a love for DC and why I love for Marvel. Jeez. And why but I mean,
they were convincing you.
But I don't even read DC comic books, and that's the problem. I think that's part of the problem, is that I don't have a background in DC comic books. If I did, I might like them a little bit better, and I just don't. And
that's even, we've talked about the slight age differences. Like for me, like probably my heyday of comics that seared in my memory was the death of Superman and then the reign of the Supermen afterwards. And that was probably the most obsessive I ever was about comic books. But like I said, that you're 5 years younger than me, something 8. But so that it just put it slightly out of sync. And when you were coming in, Marvel was ripping by them with Infinity. And so, I grew up with DC.
But for me, it was like Superman was the comic book movie when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, how many times did I watch Superman and Superman 2? And you know what I mean? Like,
I just watched
and then Batman in '89. You know what I mean?
But that's what I think part of the problem is how many Batmans. We've gotten Batman with Adam West, and you've gotten Batman in the 90s Batmans. Those 4 movies there. Those 2 pretty good movies, or 1 pretty good movie and a couple of shitty movies.
I thought it was 3. Yeah, okay. I was gonna say 3 good, 1, but 1 average, 1 bad, 2 good. That's my
And then there's the Dark Knight. Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, Dark Knight Rises, and then they're doing this Matt Reeves Batman. It's like, my problem is that if Batman is one of the 2 bigs at DC, right?
Right.
And I feel like they left the 1970s Superman out to dry. They did Man of Steel, which was and then they did Batman versus Superman, which is more of a, I know it's like split in the middle. Like, whenever I think about it, I always think about it as a Batman movie, even though it's probably both. I don't know how people think about it, but like,
right.
where is the new Superman movie? That's like that. You know, why are we not getting another Superman movie? And that's what they didn't do another Batman TV show. They did do Smallville.
Yep.
And they're actually doing, was it Lois and Clark? Lois and yeah,
I have no
Clark
idea.
and Lois. There's a TV show now called Clark and Lois. Lois and Clark. That's about Lois Lane and what's his name? Spider-Man or Superman's name?
Clark Kent.
Dick Clark.
He knows Spider-Man's name. He's just throwing more shade on DC.
Yeah, it's Superman's name, but so it's funny. But it's like, so I just feel like we would like to see another Superman movie again before another Batman movie. And if this Matt Reeves Batman movie is going to be great, awesome. As long as they're not like, oh, Batman's dad died, and this is why he became Batman, then I'm cool with it. But if there's another time we're going to see how the hell someone
he's going to get bit by a bat one of these times. Or even this
next Superman movie, I don't want to see him get crash into Earth being like he came from Krypton. Like, okay, we know he came from Krypton. Let's go on. Let's move on. Next thing. Like we talked about with the reboot of Spider-Man and all that stuff.
Hey, let's do that Elseworld story where Superman crashes and the Waynes bring him in.
There you go.
And he becomes Super Batman.
I'm all set.
I won't.
But the cool thing about the DC and the Marvel, what I will say is it gives the independent people who love comic books ground to stand on too. So then you have other comic book movies that are movies based on comic books that are, to quickly talk about that. I mean, not just TV movies, but most of those have become TV shows. Invincible most recently on Amazon by Robert Kirkman, episode Walking Dead. But like back in the 90s, I Spawn, having a Spawn movie come out, and now there's going to be a new one coming out. Those are all based out of comic books. Actually, Men in Black.
Sure.
Is actually an imprint was on Malibu Comics. It was an imprint on that. You have Kick-Ass.
Watchmen.
Watchmen. Those are all based off of comic books that were in Marvel or DC that have also come to screen, which is pretty cool. So it's not just the two bigs that have these things out there. And there's more coming. There's more things that are in the works. I heard there's something coming to children, something coming out from Boom. I know Murder Hobo is in the talks about having a TV show based on that. And so there's a bunch of stuff that's coming out. But I think without the success of Marvel and DC on the big screen, people wouldn't be taking the risks on some of these independent films either, or independent comic book movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Boys.
The Boys is
The Boys. Oh yeah.
I mean,
love that show.
It's never ending, honestly. The number of things that are out there.
And I know it was divided. If any of you watched like the HBO Watchmen series, which was a reimagining, non-canonical type thing, but it was I loved that.
So good.
I loved that.
I was very upset to hear they were not bringing it back.
Oh my gosh, I was more upset than I have about a show in a while.
Yeah. I would like to see them do the same type of thing that we were talking about with DC, where kind of like they do like the Watchmen, the comic books now have kind of like integrated, and they're basically telling like non-canonical, made canonical histories.
Exactly.
Or, kind of like Neil Gaiman with Sandman would tell just vignettes. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like it'd be really cool to just do a Watchmen show every year, but it's like a completely different time frame.
Yeah, no continuity at all. Just
it's like a historical, vignette that you're getting to see a portion of history and how that works.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be awesome.
And again, then that's what Warner Brothers gets with HBO is the cool the DC connection and have an HBO release and they'd be like gritty and dark and swearing and all that stuff in it. Spawn, the Spawn animated show was awesome.
Oh, it was great.
That was amazing. It was such a fun show. And then the X-Men.
That was so dark in its time. I remember watching it and being like, man, if my mom knew I was watching this.
Clown smoking. And it's just like, what the hell is going on right now? I've watched it actually feeding Nova. I've been have a bottle in his mouth and I have it on the background. I'm like, this kid's gonna be like, why do I like Spawn so much? I don't know. It's weird. But this new movie's gonna be awesome. He's releasing a couple new comic books. Spawn Universe came out, and King Spawn, Medieval Spawn. All those comic books are coming out. So I feel like Spawn is not going anywhere, and he's at issue 320 in his run on that. And then all these other small books that are gonna be coming out with TV shows and movies and all that stuff. I can understand why someone says they're superhero or comic book out.
Yep.
But in the same sense, some of these, if you think about something like, I don't know, Walking Dead, for example, is based on a comic book. It's not based on a superhero. Right. So it's still based on something that you have in print and it's loosely based on. They're going to coming out with a new TV show. I guess it's an Untitled Daryl and Carol series, which I'm up for. I mean, Norman Reedus. More Norman Reedus. Give me all the Norman Reedus. I love Norman Reedus.
For sure.
But yeah, I think it was pretty cool. So there's spin-offs on that too.
Sure.
And we watched The World Beyond. That great story. Needs better acting.
Ooh, that's one way to put it. Yeah. No, but I was like you. I had to watch it for the story. It was really cool.
The Walking Dead World Beyond.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's like I just went to the local like convenience store and was like, anybody want to be in my movie?
But yeah, so I mean, it's cool to see all those things, and I'm looking for. I mean, Walking Dead's going to put some movies out too, and you know, Robert Kirkman's one of my favorite writers, also of all time. So seeing anything he wants to. I mean, he has had some ones that not take off that well, like Outcast didn't do that well on Showtime and got canceled. I haven't seen Invincible yet, but I heard Invincible is insanely good.
It is insanely good.
It is really good.
I highly recommend it. I watched that. I binged that like so quick, and I was very sad when I was done.
I listened to him on an interview, and he was like, "Yeah, so I went to Amazon. Was like, I want to make a 1 hour TV, or I want to make a TV show, animated TV show, based off of my character, the Invincible. Cool, yeah, let's do it. It's gonna be very dark, like very like it's gonna be R rated. Okay, cool. It's gonna be animated. Yeah, that sounds good. It's gonna be an hour long animated TV show. Oh, that's cool too. It's like he basically were just like, do what you want, and sure they're happy about it because it's done very well on Amazon Prime for sure. So, but I mean, animated is not always my thing, but like if it's done well, I think
super excited for the What If.
Yes, and that's another one is What If. I mean, Disney Plus as a whole is freaking, and that's something that I think Marvel or DC's never going to get, but they might get with HBO Max. Is they might be able to put some things together like that, but
I mean, they've done a ton of shows lately.
Yeah.
None of them are really connected. You know, you got Doom Patrol. They tried Swamp Thing, Titans. There's Batwoman. Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff. It's just like you're not getting the same kind of, because again, you're invested. Like you feel like you have to watch WandaVision to understand what happens in Loki. You know what I mean? Obviously, What If is going to be kind of like a little bit different in that way. I'm really looking forward to especially Zombies episode because I have all the Marvel Zombies comics. You know,
Kirkman, man. He's the original writer of Marvel Zombies. But but yes, I guess I will say is I will concede one thing to DC here. You ready for this? Is that you do not have to watch it all to get what's going on, like you said.
Right.
So I will concede that aspect of it, that you feel like you do have to. And at some point with Marvel, again, the pandemic screwed some things up, but like there was Black Widow that just came out. You have Shang-Chi that's coming out. You have Eternals that's coming out. And Spider-Man No Way Home. All those movies come out from July to December of 2020. Then you had WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If. You have Hawkeye coming out and supposedly Miss Marvel coming out at some point this year too. So the last 6 months of 2020, it's a lot of shit I feel like a lot of it has to be watched to get what the hell's going on. So at some point they're going to have to start spreading some of these things out, or I basically have to decide, okay, I'm watching Marvel and nothing else based on the comic book because I just can't focus on that all.
Right.
And so that will be the weird thing. And maybe some of them will have to binge and not watch every week like they have it is now and stuff like that.
That's why WandaVision impressed me though. Cause like you said, it's kind of, I felt like, are we at the point where it's like, if you're in, you're in, we'll keep making these cool movies for you. Like Annie's never going to love it. And then she loved that. And that made her come in. And so I still think that to me, just like impressed me that this far in the game, there's people like that are impressed.
Yes.
When you list all that stuff off, like in your professional opinion, do you see fatigue setting in now? Like we're so far in 23, 24 movies, right? 10 years, 11, going on 11 years. But now they're ramping up production. They're not going to stop. Like it's going to be 4 movies every year. Obviously the shows are insanely successful. They're going to continue to make shows. But I mean, it's a universe, so there's going to be people that's what they do. They live in that universe, and that's like pretty much all they do, you know?
I think that makes their move really smart because they're, like you said, recognizing that at some point there's going to be a bit of inevitable fatigue.
Right.
But the people that are there are going to stay.
People that are invested. I mean, I always say,
World of
regulars make your business.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's how you stay in business. You cultivate a customer base, you know?
But I mean, I guess one thing I will say is that they don't come out. It's like a TV, so there's like Loki was 6 episodes,
right?
And so it was in between. So Black Widow came out and it was in the same spot. But if they time it correctly, that a movie comes out and then 6 episodes, and then a couple weeks later another movie comes out.
Right.
It's not like you're watching that movie and concurrent with this TV show. It's you watch the movie as an episode of the greater picture, and then 6 weeks worth of other stuff. So like if you just watched one of those every week, 2021 is set. I've got a movie or a TV show to watch every night or every once a week. So I guess it would keep me involved and keep me entrenched in it, just like a comic book would. And that's the thing. Is
from a purely personal point of view, I'm clearly still invested. I'm like sitting waiting for the show to drop, like hitting play. So
I was kind of playing.
And that's what I think the benefit of the weekly thing too, is it doesn't take a lot of. It's not like you're like, and it keeps the talk. When Adam, you're cleaning lines, you're doing something, we see each other every week. We're talking about it. I visit Queen City. I'm like, hey, did you see Loki this week? Yeah, I saw Loki. It's not like, oh, did you see Stranger Things? Yeah, I'm on episode 4. Oh, I finished it, and that's the conversation ends because you don't remember which episode had which thing in it, so you can't talk up to. Yes,
it's
and
like
so it's there's that aspect of it too, and maybe at some point it will be one of those things that like a show will happen and you have to see the movie on opening weekend because in the middle of the show it actually has something to do with the next week's episode. Like if you don't go see it opening weekend, next week's episode, not that you're gonna screw the whole show up, but something's gonna be connected in that aspect of it's literally happening in time with the movie. That's when it might get a little bit more difficult if they end up doing stuff like that. But I feel like some of these TV shows are gonna be based off of characters that are not B characters, but characters that are like your WandaVisions, your Falcon and Winter Soldier, and your Lokis are not Captain America and Iron Man and Hulk. It's all these other characters, and maybe that's how they do in origin stories. Maybe Fantastic Four would be much better as a 4-part miniseries on Disney Plus that introduces each character from Fantastic Four, and it's not a movie. You can decide to watch it, or you can not decide to watch it, and then the movie happens.
Like the last season of Arrested Development, where they're basically kind of like telling the same story from different perspectives. You'll see the same thing over and over again. That would be pretty cool. I think. Russo brothers to do it.
Yeah. Vantage Point was great like that too. Have you seen Vantage Point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. The movie's like 12 minutes long, but it's an hour of something long, but it's 12 minutes worth of film.
Different perspectives.
It's different perspectives, different vantage points of the action. But yeah, I think if they do it that way, I think it'd be fine. I think it's like having these B characters be things would be great. So but yeah, I mean, so I think there's comic book movies are not going anywhere.
No, I don't.
I think that again, now you guys have talked me up. This is my therapy session. Talk me off a ledge a little bit about DC. The idea that I have warmed up now, if they just go to these individual movies and TV shows, if they do Killing Joke as a movie, not just an animated movie, if they do the Long Halloween, if you do some of these cool stories,
Arkham Asylum, I'd like to see.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so just do those small stories and say we're not connecting these. It could be different Batman every time. It could be whatever it may be, as long as they're not going, okay, Batman has an orange suit. Batman has a suit that looks just like this, not just like it, but like similar to the comic book. I'm cool with that too. But with Marvel, I think they've done it the way that I like it, and it is because I started reading comic books again. Was when Brian Michael Bendis was writing New Avengers, and I could read New Avengers and read Thor, and again it would be a different vantage point. Thor would be fighting the exact same battle in a different comic book title as it was in New Avengers, and New Avengers showing up, and I'm just like, this is so badass! Oh my gosh, I want to read all of them.
Yeah,
and that's why the movies have worked.
I'm hung up on what Josh said now, which is I really now need an Arkham series.
Yeah. That'd be
Arkham
awesome.
Asylum, the series, that would be amazing.
Well, it's the same thing I say. Well, again, to finish up more on comic books, because a Last Ronin TV show from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on like Netflix or HBO Max or some sort of HBO, something that's like you can have
that has the budget,
be like shit, man, and like actually have like the
dark
in the comic book. Spoiler for there's some flashbacks. They talk to all the turtles, but only one of them survives. And some of that stuff would be like cool to actually have. Like these turtles are in the future technically, so they're now adults. They're not just teenagers. They're actual like adults, and they stub their toe. They say shit, and so like that's what I would like to see. I would like to see some blood, some people like them actually killing people. And if they did that on like an HBO Max or Netflix, that would be an amazing series again. And that's probably just taking my childhood love and getting it up to the point where I'm now an adult and want to see that shit. But like making some dark stuff would be cool too.
I agree.
Making Dark Avengers TV show don't put it on Disney Max or Disney Plus, put it on Hulu. Make it dark.
Yeah, I'd like to see Radar Thunderbolts movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're gonna get another Deadpool movie here pretty soon, and we're excited for that. So I'm again another thing is like a whole discussion could have happened another time is how they're going to work in this whole X-Men Fantastic Four kind of thing too. But
that's another interesting thing, that I'm like, they've got a lot of strings right now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I can kind of see how they're going to tie some of them together, but I'm also like, you got Skrulls. That's a pretty big, because I'm always, the comic books are always my like roadmap, what are you going to do? Because like theory crafting, and it's fun to think about, try to predict what's going to happen. Skrull's pretty big. Secret Invasion's pretty big storyline. But you've got Kang at the beginning of this.
Yes.
Yep.
And you're like, he's got to be the big bad for the whole phase. You know what I mean? So like, Secret Wars or, Secret Invasion going to be like off to like a side plot, Right. So like, I'm really interested to see how they have to have a plan if they're just like dangling all these things. You know what I mean?
Kevin Feige knows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin Feige knows. He definitely has this plan.
Yeah. But like, honestly, and then you think about it again, context of comic books, X-Men, Fantastic Four are like the Avengers are like third.
Yes.
When you come to Marvel Comics, you know what I mean? As far as superhero teams go.
Right.
And that's why they still owned it. It's why X-Men and Fantastic Four, they didn't own anymore, because those are the ones people wanted when they sold them originally. So it's like,
those are absolutely huge additions to something that's already huge. You know what I mean? Like, the characters that they started with are kind of B characters as far as the comic books go. There was no Spider-Man. No. There's no Fantastic Four, but as far as the MCU goes,
Right. And so it's fascinating to see where they're going to go. And I know one of the things I do like about that is basically after the end of Avengers movie, you basically knew Thanos was coming. Like when they started talking about Infinity Stones and they started talking about that, you're like, okay. And then all of us who know comic books are like, okay,
I know what that means.
The snap is coming. And so like basically for the rest of the movies, you're just like, okay, this is building up to that. Now it's almost like we're starting with the big bad, and we're deconstructing or seeing where this big bad goes. And because it's multiverse and there's multiple ones, it could be different versions of Kang and different things. Yeah. It's gonna be freaking insane to see.
I'm excited for the fact that he'll be there the whole time.
Yes.
So like Thanos, you saw him sitting in the chair, and then you didn't see him for like, honestly, real time, like 4 years,
something like that,
And you're just like, he hasn't done anything. So like that threat when he does show up isn't quite as insidious as Kang.
Yeah, that lingering threat. Yeah.
And they can just drop him in wherever they want. Literally any show, any movie he could show up. And Jonathan Majors is awesome.
Yes, and again, to put it in there, Jonathan Majors is freaking amazing. Like I'm sorry, I don't if anybody saw the movie Split and seeing what's his face, crap, what the hell he played Professor X.
McAvoy.
Yes, McAvoy.
Yes.
He playing, I was like, how the hell is he going from character to character to character? And it's like Jonathan Majors doing that at the desk on Loki. If you haven't seen it, obviously it's gonna be spoilers, but he's there and he's like talking and he's like doing this acting, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy is unbelievable, and I'm excited to see where he's gonna go, because he's definitely gonna be able to play different versions of Kang. Like you can tell he's gonna be able to play the mean person, the funny person, the crazy person, and have these different versions of Kang, which is gonna be fascinating as hell. And we could go on and on and on about predicting what the future of this looks like, but I don't want to keep Josh forever here on this podcast. So what I think we'll do is, honestly, Josh, is we'll finish up. So I'm going to kick you off in a second here. But I wanted to, Queen City Cinema Club, downtown Bangor, still open Wednesday to Sunday.
Wednesday through Sunday.
And you can find them at queencitycinemaclub.com, on Facebook, on Instagram. Book a theater, watch some of these new movies, watch old movies, catch up.
Food. Yeah. Hell yeah.
So, quickly, as you're finishing up here, though, are you looking for? Is there a specific movie other than that it's coming up based on a comic book that you're really looking forward to seeing, like the most out of all these ones that are coming up, like within the next few years?
I think so. I'm not like a huge Doctor Strange fan. I'm not like a huge fan of like the magic and stuff necessarily. Like I'm more of like, I mean, my people are always non-powered heroes. Sure. So it's Batman, it's Iron Man, it's Widow. Deadpool reluctantly has powers, and his only power is he can't really die.
Yes, that's not
so anyway. Not a huge Doctor Strange fan, but if they're actually going to make a horror movie, then I'm really interested to see that happen.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Other than that, like there's just like a lot that I'm just like I consume it all immediately.
Yes.
Like I get home from work and I'm like, all right, new episode of Loki Wednesday night, 3 a.m. You know what I mean? So but yeah, I'm pretty interested to see Multiverse Madness. And now that we know that Kang's gonna be in Ant-Man Quantumania, those movies are fun, they're not like my favorites, but they're always good and fun. I think this is gonna be, those two are gonna be like major puzzle pieces for everything that comes forward. You know what I mean? So
yes,
I'd say those are the two that I'm looking forward to the most.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that from the movie expert on the Main State of Mind, right? Yeah, right. But yeah, so sweet. So yeah, check out Queen City Cinema Club in downtown Bangor. Go watch a movie there, play some video games, get some unbelievable food. We're not giving Josh any credit for the food. It's all of his wife, Tiffany.
You're also apparently you're Bangor's movie expert now too. So,
so
any questions about movies,
at all,
go to Josh.
Yeah. Put that on the door.
Yeah. Home of Bangor's movie expert.
You got to buy a beer first, though, or some tacos.
Yeah.
You won't answer any questions until someone buys a beer or tacos first, though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to buy food.
Answers aren't free, bub.
Advice for paying customers only.
Yeah.
You can use the bathroom all you want. You just have to pay for advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So check them out, Queen City Cinema Club, downtown Bangor, at the Queen City Cinema Club on Instagram, Facebook, and check them out on their website, queencitycinemaclub.com. Josh Moulton, always great, man. I'll see you soon, okay?
Yep. Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yep. Have a good one.
So Josh was great. I loved having Josh on. I always think that, we could have done this episode just the two of us.
Sure.
But having him on there and having him insights is having more insights is more fun. So I wanted to finish up quick with a couple things. What are you looking? Are you looking forward to anything in particular? I don't know.
Movie wise, I really, I'm always looking forward for the next Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. I love Spider-Man. I got to go for movie wise. Probably my next one I'm really looking forward to is Multiverse of Madness. But right now, overall, it's the What If series.
Yes, What If series. This to me too, and that's the thing is getting me into animation.
Yep.
Is that aspect of I never really got into it. Yep. I have all of the Batman animated movies. I have all of the Spider-Man stuff. I have all of that. I just can't get it took me pulling teeth to get me to watch the Spawn series at one point.
Right.
It's just, I can't for some reason about it. I think something about the fact that the What If series is continuity, but not, if that makes any sense. Like these characters are based in the world that I'm used to. So even watching an X-Men movie now is harder than watching Ant-Man over again because at least it has something to do with what's going on in the multiverse or the MCU. Whereas the What If series is going to be based in it. So like the Peggy Carter visual drawing of it looks like Peggy Carter from the MCU. So there's that aspect that will make me want to watch it more.
Yeah, it could be a fun vessel for things. Like it could be a good way for them to give you a real quick fill in on some old Marvel stories you don't know about, because it could be what if X did Y, but in the process they might give you a little brief thing on the Secret Wars and what they were back in the day.
What if you could do? What if? Honestly, it wouldn't be good right now because the Infinity War just ended and you want that to sit in and stuff. But what if 5 years from now you could do? What if Thanos didn't snap his fingers? What if Thanos didn't exist, or any of those things, and go back and change some of the original stories with the same physical looking actors.
Yes.
And that's the thing. So that's part of the reason why I probably haven't gone into animation that much, is because they don't make the characters look the same.
Yep.
And so it's kind of hard. It feels disconnected. But I'm looking to What If a lot. I'm also looking forward to Multiverse of Madness. But honestly, like I said, this show is going to come out after this is released. But I'm looking forward to DC's Suicide Squad. And I honestly, again, it kind of go back to my Marvel love, is James Gunn wrote it and directed it, who did Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
And so he's going to bring that Guardians of the Galaxy fun twist to it, which you're going to love. Idris Elba's in it, which is amazing. Yep. It's going to be awesome there. Again, Margot Robbie is great as Harley Quinn. And then I'm also looking forward to Shang-Chi and all the other ones that are coming out too. Eternals, any of the Marvel movies that are coming out. And then like I said, those are ones that are I don't know if for some reason DC doesn't do it for me, but Suicide Squad, the commercial looks amazing. And then down the road, I'm looking forward to Thor: God and Thunder or Love and Thunder, because again, Taika Waititi's going to kick ass at that. And if you like Thor Ragnarok, you're probably going to
because that one's going to come out, and then it'll be our next favorite one, and we'll forget about all the other ones. And so we don't even think about that one yet.
No. So I'm thinking we're going to make some ideas. We've got another hostful episode coming up at some point, but now if we wanted to piggyback on this, we could talk how we're going to go in the future, what we think is going to happen, how they're going to introduce X-Men, how they're going to introduce Fantastic Four.
That might be a really fun thing to play in with the What If in general, because to talk about What If and then speculate on other things.
Yes. What if
they did this?
That could potentially happen.
Our What If episode.
Yeah. What if now is happening to what if happened in the past? We could do an episode of basically what if happens in the future, because the what if is basically what if Black Panther was actually Iron Man or whatever it may be. But so it's kind of cool. And actually will be the last time we'll actually get to hear Chadwick Boseman plays Black Panther.
That's right, because
they recorded it before he died.
I say that because it's the actual actors.
Yeah, some of them. They've actually come out with when they originally put the trailer out, put the idea they were doing as the actors are coming back to play them, and now as it sits, there's 4 of the original.
Still,
so they all look like them. That's the thing. The drawings and the animation.
Even that though, that's a good bridge to bring people in.
You can hear some people in the background.
Because a lot of people are going to want to hear the Chadwick Boseman.
Correct.
Like
Chadwick Boseman one's going to be huge because it's like it's a posthumous.
Yeah.
Posthumous.
Yeah. Posthumous. Yeah.
Yes.
But no, absolutely. I think that's what's going to bring people into the series.
Mm-hmm. Is that, and I said again, if you create the same timeline, same backstory that this person existed in the universe, but what if it happened this way? It's not like what if Iron Man was played by, Superman. Superman doesn't exist in this universe. It's what if Iron Man was played by this other character in the same universe, so you can still have that, foundation of, Chadwick Boseman playing Black Panther, which is pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to anything comic book related. Again, I'm looking forward to the new Walking Dead series. I'm looking forward to eventually watching Invincible, getting on that. There's a Spawn movie that's going to come out in the future with Jamie Foxx. I think anything that has to do with comic books, I am 100% into, because I like the idea of having some sort of material to look at.
Yep.
And I don't read books that often, so when a movie's based on a book, I'm always I didn't read that book. But there's a lot of times of movies based off of a comic book, it's a good chance I'd actually know about it a little bit better.
Definitely.
So, go into it. So you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube for the video portion. Everywhere you can find us is at The Maine State of Mind or themainstateofmind.com. I stole that from Adam, but I thought, why don't I do it every once in a while? Adam's been doing it. But yeah, so subscribe, follow, rate on an Apple Podcast about the podcast because it puts us up further. We do talk a lot about Maine stuff. And part of the reason we got to be able to talk about comic book movies, we brought in a Maine person who's Josh from Queen City Cinema Club. Always good to have him on. He's actually going to come on in the near future as well. And then when we record other episodes, like when we talk about comic books, we talk with Paul from Galactic Comics because he's a local Maine person. But sometimes it gives us the opportunity to talk about some of our passions, but also bring it to that Maine.
Well, and Mainers do love comic books too. So
and because we're talking about comic books, I'll get a little shout out. The Bangor Comic and Toy Con happens in October 1st through the 3rd. They are definitely selling tickets right now. You can meet the guys from the Clerks, Jason Mewes, Brian O'Halloran, those guys. You can also meet Judith Hogue from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
I can't even talk about it. It gets me too excited.
April O'Neil from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, along with local artists like Ben Bishop and Joseph Schmalke will be there. And so we're looking forward to those. That's happening October 1st through the 3rd. And I don't remember. No, this episode comes out after, I believe, Free Comic Book Day. But I believe...
Right.
Actually, I think I have it open. Yes, it does come out after Free Comic Book Day. So at Free Comic Book Day, we were live. It was great. It was fun. It's awesome.
Yeah. Time is great.
So we record these in different structured, release them differently. So sometimes timing is thrown off. But
it's probably easier if you just imagine that we are time travelers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we go back in time.
But we do. This is the real deal.
All I can think about is the song from Back to the Future. Back in time.
Yep, exactly. That should be our theme song coming in.
But so it's been great. I'm Justin.
I'm Adam.
This is The Maine State of Mind. Again, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube.
Yeah.
mainstateofmind.com.
Yeah, send us some comments. Tell us what you think.
Yes, and we'll talk more about comic books and comic book movies in the near future. But
we might have to start a Maine State of Mind Discord.
I think at some point we have to. Right. I think it's one of those things that a lot of other people have done it, and they've done it really well. So, but
cool.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yep, thank you.